Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's section, and good evening and good afternoon, good morning to you from any part of the world that you are joining us from. We are starting live for the last section in our DevOps series. So today's section is remarkable in the sense that it is the last section of this study series that we started in May, and it will be taken by a woman, by a lady, and that's why it is more important that you attend, and it's very going to be very fantastic, as it is going to be handled by a lady, and it will be the lady will cover infrastructure as configuration as code, and it will be introducing us to tools like Ansible, Chef, and Puppet, and that in the person of Chiamaka Obitube. And we have our social media handles on the screen. You can feel free to join us and check us out on those social media. Join our meetup group. Check us out on Twitch, YouTube, and Twitter, then LinkedIn and Telegram. This channel will enable you to stay up to date with our updates and events that will be unveiling to you in the days to come. So we appreciate you as you join us today. I'll be bringing up our wonderful speaker in the person of Chiamaka Obitube. Chiamaka Obitube, welcome. How are you today, Chiamaka?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. Welcome to today's section. So, how do you think the section will look like? What should your viewers expect to achieve at the end of the day?
Okay, so today we'll be talking about configuration as code, mainly looking at configuration management. So at the end of today, I hope that we'll go through the basics of configuration management, mainly talking about the basics of using Ansible, Chef, and Puppet, which are the three most popular configuration management tools that we have. So I'm hoping that by the end of this session, everybody here would go home with at least a little knowledge of what configuration management is, and to keep on learning. Yeah,
that's good. Thank you very much. Over to you, Chiamaka. All the best.
All right. Okay. Welcome everybody from any part of the world that you are viewing this from. My name is Chiamaka Obitube. I am a DevOps engineer at Descasio, a company based out of Nigeria. A little about me. So haven't always been in tech. I'm a lawyer by profession, by education rather, but now I'm a DevOps engineer. So yes, so today we'll be discussing configuration management and
okay, Chiamaka, excuse me a minute, please. Your screen is not shared. Your screen is not shared.
Oh, okay. It's coming up. Yes.
That's great. Okay.
All right. So we'll be discussing configuration as code mainly on Ansible, Chef, and Puppet. So these are my details. My Twitter handle is @DeviLawyer. You can always feel free to chat me up if you have any questions on these topics or DevOps in general. And I can also visit my blog. I do a little bit of writing. So you can go there, comment. If you have feedback, please drop on the blog. Okay. All right. So today's agenda, this is what we'll be looking at. We'll be talking about what is configuration management. We've been hearing it, but what is it actually? And then we move on to discuss Ansible, Chef, Puppet. We'll do a little demo, which would be only on Ansible due to its easy installation. And then if you have further questions, you can go ahead. But we are free to ask questions while the session is going on. I will answer the questions as they come. All right. Okay, so what is configuration management? I'll start with the history. So configuration management is a process where you manage your computer system, servers, software in a desired consistent state. So let me give you a brief history of how this started. So let's say some few years ago, we had system administrators, operations guys. So you have they were managing a lot of systems, and it was not so easy to, because if you have to make a change to a particular system, you have to go into the server, make the change, go into this other server, make the change. And it was so manual, and it took a lot of time. Sometimes it's not, you are not even sure of the changes that were made in this particular system. So there was a lot of chaos. So no documented process of the changes made on the system. There was no document that showed the kind of how many systems there were, the configurations there, and so on across different environments. So the typical environment, you have the development environment, the staging or release environment in some scenarios, and then you have the production environment. So all these environments, they have their own servers, the systems, but there was no unified way of managing these systems. So it created a lot of problem. Let's say a system is down and you're trying to troubleshoot, but there was no way for them to even know where the issue is coming from or what can be done to fix it. So it took a lot of time for these issues to be resolved, and that was how configuration management came about. So it's a process where a process for maintaining your computer system, server, software in a desired consistent state. So even if you have thousands of servers provision, you are aware of the configuration, the changes made, the state of the application, whether it's you are using a particular version of, let's say, Node.js, for example, or not. So you are aware of all the systems. Then configuration management helps users and administrators to know where their services exist. So you have this different infrastructure, but you can't. As a system administrator, you're being asked, "Oh, do you have this? Do we have this in our company? Ah, let me check. Oh, let me check." Like things like that. So configuration management helps you to avoid things, situations where you don't even know your infrastructure. You don't even know where they are or how they are kept, how they are stored, right? And then another thing that configuration management does is that it tracks individual configuration items of your system. So for each server, you know the configuration, you know how it's the current setting at that particular time, right? And then you have a documented process of the company's infrastructure. I've been mentioning documentation, yes, because at this point, you have a document that shows the state of your current infrastructure. So that's what configuration management does for you. And then with configuration management, you can also define your system settings, build and maintain those systems according to baseline settings. We are going to discuss further on that. And another thing that it does is that you can automate provisioning of your on-premises and cloud infrastructure. So configuration management is kind of centered around automation. So now you are no longer the kind of administrator or kind of DevOps engineer that will go on to SSH into a server to make some changes. No, you don't have to do that for each of the systems you're managing. Now you are going to just write a script, have a script that just automates everything for you. So that's what configuration management does. So see this with this diagram, this is just an overall view of what configuration management is. First, it helps you to identify your current system and infrastructure. Then you're able to set baseline settings. That's if you want a particular version of um, let's say particular version of Node.js or Java to be installed across all your systems, you can set that version across all your systems. So it sets you have a uniform setting across all your infrastructure. Thirdly is version control. So now we have configuration as code. So this what it means is that you are no longer having to just type in the command line. You have a script, and that script can be pushed to GitHub just like how you would do your normal code. normal programming language code. So you can push it to GitHub, Azure repos, GitLab, or any of the other version control system. And the fourth point is that it helps you to audit your infrastructure at any point in time. So these are the this is what configuration management does for you. You identify, make your settings, is you can version control. So if you make changes to your infrastructure, you'll be able to see those changes across the time periods, right? All right. So how do you know a good configuration management tool? There are so many tools out there, a lot of them. But how do you identify the proper one to use and if it's going to be good for your company, for what you're doing at that particular time? So these are just the features. The first one is a good configuration management tool can classify and manage your systems by groups and subgroups. For example, you have different environments. You have your dev, your staging, and your production environment, or you have different departments in your company. So a good configuration management is one that allows you to manage your systems in groups. So you can divide, you can create some settings that would allow you to identify what systems belong to this particular department. Let's say they are working on this product, or what belongs to another department, sales, for example, marketing, engineering, right? And then a good configuration management tool can allows you to centrally modify your base configurations. So for example, you have um for, let's say for Ansible, you can have like your main file that defines your base configurations, and you have subsequent files that allows you to make some specific changes, right? Then the third one is that it allows you to roll out new settings to all applicable systems. What does this mean? It means that um, you can make changes at any time to your infrastructure. You don't have to start destroy and start all over again. Let's say you've rolled out something to your infrastructure. Let's say you were using Java 11, for example, and you need to make an upgrade to Java 12, right? So a good configuration management system can make you apply those changes to your existing systems with easily, without any, you don't have to start destroying and start building again, right? And then a good configuration management tool can also automate system identification, patches, and updates. So you don't have to manually do these things anymore. And the next point is that it identifies outdated, poor performing, and non-compliant configurations, which I find it to be very, very awesome. Like sometimes when you are running, let's say Ansible, for example, you could your play. Okay, I think I'm moving forward this time, but sometimes your code might fail, and from the error message, you could see that you are using an older version or something that is not uniform. So it tells you the error. Maybe some it tells you the error that something that is the error with your configurations when you are running the code. So that's a very, very important feature, so that you know you're not sending something that is not compliant, is outdated, or is wrong, or you're pushing a bug, for example. And then another thing is a good feature is that it prioritizes action. So in case of, let's say for example, you want to provision a VM, and in the way you've written your code, maybe you set up the VM first without the resource group, for example. A good configuration management system knows that you have to provision a resource group first before you can now create your VM in Azure. And then it can access and apply prescriptive remediation. So it's not just about identifying non-compliant or outdated configuration. It can also give you an idea of how to go about to resolve the issue. That's from the error message that you get. And the final one is that it can be version controlled. So something that you want to be able to commit and see your changes across different times. All right, so we'll move on to discuss Ansible, which is the first configuration management tool that we'll be discussing today. So, what is Ansible? Ansible is it's an IT automation framework. It's owned by Red Hat. Red Hat is quite a big company. They have a lot of tools, and in the DevOps space, they have a lot of tools. Although it's owned by Red Hat, Ansible is also open source. So you can install Ansible without paying any money. But if you are running an enterprise company, for example, there are some big companies that have a lot of infrastructure. So Red Hat provides the enterprise version of Ansible for them, um, which is Ansible Tower and some other some other tools that they have. So if you're an enterprise company, you can consult meet Red Hat and they can give you different offerings that they have for enterprise companies. But as a DevOps engineer, or if you're running your small company, you can easily get Ansible from you can easily download Ansible to your system without paying any money. So Ansible is built with Python. The only thing that you require to run Ansible is Python. You have to have install Python on your system before you'll be able to run Ansible because it was built with Python. Then Ansible is the most popular infrastructure management tool on GitHub. Is the most stirred. So on GitHub you have like this feature where you can stir your favorite repositories or favorite technologies. So when it comes to configuration management, Ansible is the most stirred configuration management tool on GitHub. So I mean, it's very if you want to use it, there's a large community there and large resources on Stack Overflow and the rest. So one of the greatest strengths of Ansible is the ability to run regular shell commands. So you are not at this point you are not learning a different language when you are using Ansible. You're not learning, let's say, you're not learning Java or something. You're just using your normal command line shell command, your bash scripts to run Ansible. So you don't have to because the way Ansible was being built, it's you had to SSH for you to make changes to your system. You have to SSH into that system or log into that system. So and you'll be running shell commands. So the way Ansible is built, the code itself, you can easily declare your shell commands, run them the way you would run on the command line. Would go on, we are going to see more of that later on in this session. So like I mentioned again, Ansible is very popular. It's easy to use, right? So what does Ansible aim to? What are the benefits of using Ansible, right? It's clear. It's very easy to use because it uses YAML, right? That YAML stands for yet another markup language, but some people are saying that it means something else. So it uses YAML and it's easy for anyone, even if you're non-technical, like you can easily understand YAML. It's very easy to use, it's very simple, it's just like English, so anybody can use it. And if you go on to use the APIs, they're actually very easy to use. You don't have to struggle to understand it because the English is so simple. The commands are very descriptive, right? The second thing is that it is very fast to learn and you can set it up easily. The reason is because so with other configuration management tools, you have what we call the master and slave agents. So you have one system for the master that controls the other agents, the slaves, that's the other computers, right? But with Ansible, you don't need that. You can just run everything from your system. We are going to see that later during the demo. So you don't with other tools you would have to set up a master and slave, which can be very complicated if you are still new to DevOps and all of this. So Ansible is very fast to use, and it's complete in this sense. Ansible does three things in one, and it does it very, very well. Like, it's the setup is easy. You can run your commands very easily. You can set up just on the same system. You can set up everything. So it's a complete package. You don't need you don't need any other dependency to run Ansible. The only dependency that you need is just to have Python installed on your system. You don't need any other tool or any other package. So it's efficient. I think so no extra software is needed to run your applications. And if when you move on to start using Ansible has what we call modules, and they work via JSON. That's the JavaScript object notation format. So it's very, very, very efficient. And if you want to extend your Ansible, you can extend Ansible with other languages. So Ansible has what we call modules. Like, if you know JavaScript, if you understand classes, you can understand modules. So they are reusable. So you can actually extend Ansible with any other language. Let's say JavaScript, .NET, and the rest. So Ansible is also secure in this sense, like I mentioned. So a little bit of history here. The person that created Ansible, not Red Hat, there's a man that created Ansible before it was sold to Red Hat. He was using Ansible to sorry, he had the issue of where he had to provision many servers at once, and it was time consuming, right? So he created Ansible using SSH commands, like your normal bash commands. So when it worked, he went on to develop it and then open sourced it. So Ansible is secure in the sense that it uses SSH to log into your systems. Like, the framework itself is so secure that if you're configuring your systems or your servers, you have to log into you have to log into your, let's say, your account or your system. So it's very secure that no extra open ports or daemons are on your servers because of the SSH feature that it has. That's how it communicates with other servers, uses SSH. You would see other configuration management tools and uses SSL TLS, yeah. But for Ansible, it uses SSH. So what are some of the basic concepts that you should know about Ansible? The first thing we'll talk about is the control node. The control node is any machine with Ansible installed. So once you run Ansible, once you install Ansible on your system, it acts as a control node it acts as a control node. Yes. So once your machine is your control node or your VM, because Ansible can be run on Docker, it can be run on your Windows VM, it can be, sorry, not Windows VM. It can be run on it can be run on your Docker, Linux, your Mac OS system. So once you install Ansible, it's on your system. That system acts as your control node. Then we have what we call managed nodes. So managed nodes are the servers you manage with Ansible. So like I mentioned, with Ansible, you can manage multiple systems. So for each system you are managing, it's a managed node. So you have the control node, which is the main system where you install your Ansible, and you have your managed node. So any server you're managing or system you're managing with Ansible is a managed node. Also, you can also refer them can also refer this to as hosts. It could be your website, it could be your VM, it could be anything. But once the server that you're managing with Ansible, it becomes a managed node and your host at that moment. So as in Ansible, we have what we call the inventory. So it's a file that has a list of all your managed nodes. So you can see all the servers you are managing at you are managing with Ansible at that particular time inside the inventory or the host file, as you may call it. Then we have collections. So collections is like you have um, you have some configurations that you can use. So, for example, you have the Azure, you have the AWS. So those are collections of different um, configurations like playbooks, roles, modules, plugins, all in one that you can use in your Ansible configuration, for example. So then we have modules. So modules are the units of code Ansible executes. So if you understand classes, you would understand modules. So it's a set of code that has been bundled into one, so that you can use it. So you can use it without having to without having to write each of those lines separately. So with Ansible, you can run modules which have and they are very reusable, so you can reuse them as much as you want in your different Ansible playbook files. So you have task. So I'll come back to task. So let me go on to explain ad hoc commands. So ad hoc commands is when you run any command on the when you run let's say Ansible on the command line, it's an ad hoc command, or Ansible ping. Ansible ping is when you want to check if your hosts are talking to your control node. You can run Ansible ping. So a line of command you run with Ansible, it's a ad hoc command, right? Then playbooks. So okay, let me explain tasks then. So in Ansible, is declarative in such that you can declare the actions that you want to take. So for example, if you want to install um if you want to install Node.js, or you want to install
Hello, Chamaka. Thank you for your section so far. Thank you
okay.
for the wonderful section. There's a question by Stanley, and the question is, can Ansible manage Windows machine as a host?
Yes, it can, but that offering is not available in the open source. It's not available um, in the open source version rather. So manage, if you want a Windows machine to be your control node, you have to use the Ansible tower. So you have to contact Ansible and the Ansible team to help you get that. But another way you can run it on Windows is to install it as run it in a virtual machine on your Windows. I don't know if that's clear enough, but as it is, you cannot install Ansible on a Windows machine. You have to use a virtual machine for it. But if you want to do that, you have to contact Red Hat Ansible team to set that up for you. So there's no really a Windows support for Ansible.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, you can go ahead.
All right. All right. Okay, so we were talking about tasks. So, like I mentioned, Ansible is declarative. So, let's say you want to install a particular package. You can easily run install this package. So each task is something that you want to do, something that you want to set up. You want to you want to install a particular software, or you want to have a particular VM of a particular size in your system, or you want to create a resource group, right? So each action that you take in Ansible is defined as a task. They are called tasks. We'll go on to see that during the demo. And then when you talk about playbooks, then playbooks now is an ordered list of tasks that you can run. So in a playbook, you have a lot of tasks. I mean, if you want your code to be that long, you can define any task that you want to run can be in your playbook, and you just run that playbook with one line. So the playbook is written in YAML file. So if you're going to be creating any playbook, it has to be playbook.yaml, because that's the only way that Ansible will understand what you want to carry out. All right, so let's move on to Ansible installation. So like I mentioned, the only dependency you need for Ansible to work on your system is Python, and it's advised to use if you're using Python 2, the version should be 2.7, or if you're using Python 3, you have to use version 3.5 and higher. So anything other than these versions might not work properly on your machine, and it keeps on changing. If as more changes are coming into Ansible, you might have to upgrade the current Python version that you are using to suit the new changes. So it can be installed on your Linux and Mac OS. So for Linux, you have the different distributions. If you're running Ubuntu, these are the commands you would run to install Ansible. Very easy, three lines of command. And if you're running CentOS, one line of command. If you're running Mac OS, just one line. If you're using pip, um, you can easily use pip to install Ansible. Pip is a Python package manager. Yes, it's a Python package manager. You can also run pip on Ubuntu, or you can also run pip on Ubuntu and CentOS. So like I was mentioning, on Windows, um, it's not supported directly, so you have to use install Ansible on a virtual machine running on Windows, or you can use Red Hat Ansible Tower, but you'd have to contact the Windows support team for to help you with that. So yeah, if you want to learn more about Ansible, you can look at this link over here. And look at this link over here. Right. So let's move on to, I don't know how much time that we have. Oh, the time is far well spent. Far well spent. So let's move on to the other tools. So the next tool we'll be discussing today is Chef. So Chef, like Ansible, is also open source, but it was built with Ruby. I don't know if we are familiar with the Ruby programming language. So if you know Ruby, it's an advantage when you're using Chef. It's easier to understand. I don't know Ruby, so but I mean I've used Chef, but it's actually easy to use. It's not so complicated, but the advantage is if you know Ruby, to be very easy to um use Chef. So it's used by a lot of enterprise companies: Facebook, Nordstrom, IBM, SAP, a lot of them. So it's quite popular there in the ecosystem. So Chef is available in four versions. You have the open source, which you can easily download on your system. You have the software as a service Chef. With this, you have to pay for it. It comes with some features that the open source version does not have. Then you also have the Chef Automate, is another version of Chef that is available, um, which can also be run on premise. Then you have the AWS Upworks for Chef Automate. This is if you're using AWS, so you have a particular version of Chef on AWS. All right, so moving on, let's what are the basic concepts to understand in Chef? We have the Chef server, which is the center of the workstations or the nodes. So just like we have the control node on Ansible, we have the Chef server. So the thing about Chef is that in Chef you have the master, which is the Chef server, and you have the slaves, which are the different nodes here. So on the Chef server, this is where you have all your cookbooks, your recipes, your metadata is stored on the Chef server. Like your master node, it controls the other nodes. So you have all your configurations are stored in the chef server. And then you have your workstation. The workstation is where your is the admin system where all your cookbooks are created and tested. And I think I would describe what a recipe and cookbooks are before we go ahead to the other one. So what is a recipe? A recipe is just like how you have task, or yeah, in Ansible you have a recipe that defines your configuration, right? So you can write your recipes, and which can be stored in a cookbook. And a cookbook, just like an Ansible playbook, now has all your completed recipes on them. And on your workstation is now where you create your recipes and your recipes and your cookbooks. So it can be kind of overwhelming for the first time, but just understand that the basic concept of chef is the 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 lowest level of chef is the recipe. Then from the recipe you have the cookbook. And then you have the workstation that I mentioned is where all your cookbooks are created and tested. And your these cookbooks are now stored in your chef server. Then we have the so now we have the notes. So like I mentioned, the chef server is the master node. Then you have the other systems where that are being managed by the chef server are the nodes. So they are the slaves, if you want to call it that, right? So that's where you store the machines that are being managed by the chef server, which could be your virtual machines, your storage devices, your network devices. So your servers that you manage with chef are called nodes. Then I've so what is knife? Knife is now the command that enables you to communicate with the contents of the chef server. So knife is the way you run Ansible this on the command line is the way you would run knife this on the command line. So it's how you communicate with the chef server. All right. So how do you install?
Hello, Chamaka. Apologies to
Oh,
interrupt. So we have a few questions in the chat window. So unfortunately, there's some network connection that wonderful moderator Imo is trying to sort out in the back end. So I'm
okay.
just filling in temporarily. So the first question that we have in the chat window is from Jim Ode. So he said, "Is Chef agentless like Ansible?"
Okay. No, it's not. It's not agentless. So with chef, you would need an agent, and which so it's not agentless. So you need to set up your chef server on a different machine, and then you have the other agents on a different machine. So it's not agentless. You would need a one system to for your chef server, and then the other systems, that's your other slaves and agents. So it's
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, thanks very much for that. So, and I guess the next one is not really like a question, it's just a comment. So, I'll just leave that out. So, I think Jim was just saying slave is not more politically correct. So, we can ignore.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Yes. My bad. My bad. Yes.
No, no, just it's all
All
fun.
right. All
Yeah,
right.
okay. Let you carry on. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, yes. Fine. Okay. So, how do you get to set up Chef on your system? So the Chef workstation, you can install the Chef workstation, and it gives you everything you need to get started with Chef. So from your ad hoc remote execution, your cookbook creation tools, your configuration task, they are all in the Chef workstation. So for the different operating system that you're using, for Ubuntu, you can run this command. Wget is how you can it's a command to download or get the content of a particular URL from the command line. So instead of going to your browser, you can easily run the wget to view the contents of a particular URL on the command line. So you can run this command to install the Chef workstation. And if you're using CentOS or RHEL, you can use yum, run this command. And if you're using Mac OS, you can and you have Brew installed, you can easily run this command to install Chef. Also, I forgot to mention all the, okay, on Windows you can download the Chef workstation from the official downloads page. Pardon me for that error there. And if you're using Chocolate, which is a package manager for Windows, you can also run this command. If you don't want to use these commands, you can also go to this URL here. That's the downloads page for each of these operating systems and install the Chef workstation. But they would all work the same, whether you installed um, from the Chef workstation downloads page or you install from the command line. They would give you the same result. All right, so let's move on to Puppet. Kind of a little behind on time. So Puppet is also a very very good configuration management tool. It's also open source, and just like we have enterprise versions of Chef, we can you also have the enterprise version in Puppet. It's a declarative language. So in what it means is that you just declare, let's say, do this, it does it for you. You don't have to write a complicated code. So it's very easy to use. And with Puppet, it has its own code, has its own language that is being written in. So with that language, called the Puppet code. You can configure your infrastructure in a desired state. That's the state you want it to be in at that particular time. So just like Chef, Puppet is configured in an agent server architecture in which you have your primary node that controls all the configuration for the other agents, the agent nodes are the managed nodes. Just like how we have in Chef, you have your Chef server. In Puppet, you also have your primary node that has all the configuration and controls the information going on to the other managed nodes. And the servers and agents communicate with by HTTPS using SSL certificates. So the connection is also very, very secure. All right. So what are the benefits of using Puppet? It's consistent. It's idempotent. So it has its own language. I believe it's built the it's built I think Ruby too, but it has its own language, just like how you have Groovy. If you're familiar with Jenkins, you have the Groovy language. You also have a Puppet language. Then it's an inexpensive method for solving the configurations, bottlenecks, and latency in the speed. So it's very easy to use and it's very easy to set up also. And with Puppet, you have a large open source developer community. So if you're having issues with using Puppet, you can easily go online or on the Puppet forum and ask your questions and get them answered, or Stack Overflow. So you are sure that you have a lot of people using it, and if you're having issues, you can easily resolve them. Actually what I tell people: don't use a technology that few people don't know, because if you run into issues, it will be very very difficult to resolve them. But if you're using a popular technology, it's um it's easy to get help, and it makes your work easier. All right. So what are the concepts in Puppet? We have the Puppet server, which is the primary node that controls the configuration information for one or more agent nodes. Then you have the Puppet agent, which translates the code into commands and executes it on the systems that you specify. So you have the agent that getting information from the server and then using it to the agent gets the information from the server and then executes that information on the managed nodes, as the systems. Then you have the Puppet DB. It's a kind of a database where all the data generated by your Puppet is being stored. So it's optional. If you might decide not to have a Puppet DB, but if you want to store your data generated by Puppet, you can store them in the Puppet DB. So you have Factor. Factor is the Puppet's inventory tool that gathers facts about the agent nodes, such as the host name, the IP address, and the operating system. And then you have your module, which manages your specific task in your infrastructure, such as installing and configuring a piece of software. So module contains both code and data, so you can specify your task using modules in Puppet. All right, so how can you install Puppet? The first thing you have to do is to enable the Puppet platform repository, and this is depending on the type of operating system that you have. We won't be able to do that in this session, but you can visit these links to enable to see how you can enable the Puppet repository on your system. And then you have to install the Puppet server, you have to install the Puppet agent, and you optionally you can decide to install the Puppet DB. All right, so let's move on. I just want to show us a little example of how Ansible works in Azure. So you could see how you can automate the creation of a virtual machine. So you don't have to go into the Azure portal to you don't have to go into the Azure portal to click and provision. Let's say I want to provision 5 servers. Doing that is time consuming. So we'll see how you can easily set up a VM on using Ansible, set up a VM on Azure using Ansible. All right, so I will stop sharing my screen for a moment so I can share the demo screen. Okay. All right. I don't know if my screen will really show it. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's move on. I'll be using a Linux VM running on my system. So if you want to follow along, you can also follow, but I'll be very quick because we do not have enough time. Okay, create session. Okay, so the first thing to do, if you want to start using Ansible in Azure, the first thing you have to do is to install the Azure CLI. I already have it installed, but if you don't have it, you can easily install it from the Azure docs. So I think um, so you can easily install the Azure CLI. But I already have that installed, so um, we'll move on. So you can install for Windows, Mac OS. The steps are here, very easy. All right. So the second thing is that you need to have an Azure account before you can use this. So I already have my Azure account. Let me open so that I will have my Azure portal, so we could see I have my Azure portal. So you need an Azure account with a subscription. You need a subscription to be able to use this because you'll be provisioning servers. So you would need a valid subscription on Azure. All right. So to install Ansible, I'm using an Ubuntu system, so I have to run. Ansible is actually installed on my system, but you can run the commands on the that I shared earlier. That's 3-line commands depend that for Ubuntu, and if I use CentOS, sudo yum install can easily install Ansible. So you can see I already have Ansible installed, and as I was explaining, you have the ad hoc commands. So if I run Ansible, so this is an example of an ad hoc command. I can run Ansible. Hmm, okay. So it has so Ansible has its own um, help. So if you are having issues with any command, you can easily get the meaning of each any command that you are running and how you can use it. So let me just verify my Ansible version. Ansible dash dash version.
Yeah, apologies to interrupt, Chiamaka. Just a quick one. Is it possible to zoom in a little bit in the tool? If it's not possible, that's fine. It's just asking. Yeah,
Hmm,
that's fine if it's not possible. Yeah, so it's still visible. Yeah, thanks very much.
okay. All right. Okay. Unless I'm spelling something wrong. Okay, yeah. Weird. So if I run Ansible version to just confirm um, the version of Ansible that I'm currently running, and you can see here that you have the Python mode. I already have Python installed. So if I do Python 3, oops, sorry, made a mistake there. So you can see I already have Python installed on my system. Yes. All right, so let's move on. So we'll be what we are going to do is to create a VM, a Linux VM using Ansible playbook. So I'm going to open my Visual Studio Code. So the good thing about what we've been discussing all this while is that you can manage this infrastructure as code, just like how you would write your code. You can manage your infrastructure with code. So it's very if you're able to um, using YAML. So you can see I have um, different files here. So I have my Ansible playbook file that contains my configurations or my settings for the VM that we're going to create. So I think I might need to zoom in. I think my screen might be a little. Okay. I don't know if it's better now.
Much better. Thanks very much.
All
Much
right.
better.
Good,
Yeah.
good. Okay. All right. So we'll go through what the Ansible playbook, this Ansible playbook, so you can understand better how it works. So, like I mentioned, in Ansible you have your host, which is the system that is being managed with Ansible. So in this case, I have the name. I have a name which is create Azure VM, for example. And my host this time is localhost. So your host could be either your remote server or something else, but it could be a remote server or your system. So for here, I'm using my local host, and my connection is also local, right? And then just like in a programming language, you have variables. You also have variables in Ansible, which is declared with var. So this var stands for variables. So if you don't want to consistently mention a particular thing in Ansible, you can just declare them as variables and then reference them in your code. So I mentioned that we have task. So a task is a unit of action that you want to take in Ansible. And here I have a list of different tasks that we need to create a VM. So if you're going to create a VM on Azure, you have to put in like the name, create the resource group, name of your VM, the subnet, the NIC, the public IP address, the VNet. So you have to set all of that on the on the Azure console, that's the on the browser. But on Ansible, I can easily declare this as task. As you can see, I have the my resource group. So this is the Azure RM resource group is a module, an Azure Ansible module that allows you to create a resource group or manage resource groups in Ansible. So that was what I was talking about. So you have your task, have the Azure RM resource group, and the name is here I'm referencing the variable which I've defined earlier, Ansible demo, and the location is I'm using is EOS, so I've referenced it in here under my task. And if we go on, you can see the virtual network that I'm creating, and I'm using 10.0.0.0/16. I've created my subnets in my resource group and in my VNet. Then I've created my public IP address, as we can see, and I've set it to be a static IP address. So even when my VM gets stopped and restarted, I will still use the same IP address. Then we've set up our security group. Because we are setting up a Linux machine, we have to allow port 22 open for SSH, right? So we've done that, and I've set my priority to be 1001, and it's an inbound security group, so we're only allowing communications on port 22. Then I've set up, I've also created a task to create a NIC for the VM. And then now we are actually creating the VM, referencing the resource group, the VM name, and put the size, the admin username and password. Please do not do this just because it's demo. Don't do this. Don't expose your password in your code ever, because if you be checking this into version control, anybody that has access to it can easily your servers. Please don't do this. A better option is to use your public key, reference your public key here in the code. All right, so for the VM, I've declared the image. We're using an Ubuntu server 16.04. You can also use 1820, the latest version, if you want. So now that we've done this, I'll go ahead to open my. All right, so if you're going to run Ansible, you need to ensure that you are running Ansible in the same directory where the file is. For example, if I go to here and I run Ansible, Ansible. So if you want to run a playbook, you have to run Ansible playbook and reference the file. File name here is ansible-playbook.yaml. So you can see it's giving me an error that cannot be found. So if you're going to run Ansible, you need to ensure that you're in the directory where the Ansible file is created. So now I'll run the Ansible, this file. Oh, okay. If I referenced the wrong, so it's underscore here. Okay, so the good thing about Ansible is that it tells you, so for each step that you are doing, it takes it sequentially, so you can see a step-by-step process of how your infrastructure or your servers are being created. And if there is anything wrong here, you can see an error message, and the other steps won't finish. So we've gathering the facts, we've created our resource group, we've created our VNet, the subnet, the IP address, then we are creating the security group. So at any point, you can always see the step that is currently going on at that particular time. So the good thing is that we are creating this VM within minutes. And we are just creating one VM, but you can create multiple VMs using a single playbook, right? I can also set up a server like let's say website on using Ansible playbook. You can set up your Nginx server, put in your configuration files using a playbook. But we're not going to do that today because it will take a while. But yeah, we are going ahead. Um, so another thing is that when you're running your playbook for the first time, it might take a while. But if you make a subsequent change, it's not going to start configuring those it's not going to configure the resources you didn't make changes to. It's just going to change that particular configuration that you made. So it means it's going to take less time subsequently. All right, so we're getting into application warning. So it's a warning. So it means that our code is still okay. If you want to, it's talking about feature that will be removed here. But still, I mean, we can still use it at this particular time, so it's all good. So we are creating the VM. This will take a while. Okay, and we can okay. Let's wait. It'll be done in a few seconds. And another thing to mention is that YAML is really strict. So if we had an issue or if we had like a um, something in line, let's say I put something like this in this YAML file, it's not going to run because YAML operates like it's very strict. So it ensures that all your links, everything is correct. So if there is any misconfiguration, it's not going to run. So let me take it back. So don't have any issues. All right. Okay, it's taking a while. Okay, so as you can see, at the end of any playbook that you run, it's going to tell you um, what changed, how many, what was okay, what changed, um, what failed, what was skipped, what was rescued, or what was ignored. So we can see we had 8 okay task and 2 change task, which we can see here. Our The network interface card was changed and the VM was changed. So you can see the warning. So the good thing, like we mentioned, the benefits is that it will tell you if there are misconfigurations or outdated settings. You can see it's giving me a warning already that I did not set log for SSH password enabled. So which is useful when you are debugging. So let's move on to confirm whether our VM was created on the Azure portal. So um, let's go to our resources and okay, let's look for our resource group. So that's Ansible demo, and you can see we have our VM created. Just sorry, let's see. I use the same name. So, Yes. So you can see we've set up the virtual machine is currently running, and you can see all our settings, Ubuntu, the size, everything is here. So that is how easy it is to set up a Linux machine using Ansible. And with Ansible, you can also destroy the VM with a playbook, right? You can start the VM, can stop the VM. So we'll go ahead to let's delete what we have done because I don't want to incur cost. Right. So you can easily delete your servers, your configurations using Ansible. So we just go ahead to do that now. But so we have our virtual machine running. So we can easily delete what we've set up using Ansible playbook. So the name of my file is delete Azure VM. So what I'm doing, I'll have to first of all delete the Azure VM because I can decide to delete the resource group, which should delete all the resources, including the VM. But if you want to delete just the VM, you can delete only the VM. If you want to delete, let's say, the network interface or the virtual storage, you can delete them separately. You can delete any of the resources separately. So let's just quickly run the command to delete, run our playbook to delete our VM. So we have the name of the VM dot yaml.
Awesome. That's amazing, Chiamaka.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So it's going to take a while. So in a few minutes, if we go to the Azure portal, we'll see that our VM and the resource group no longer exists. All right.
Wow, what a way to end this series, Chiamaka. That was an awesome, awesome session. I am really thankful that I really joined in the back end to just listen and to make note and to take screenshots of some of the things that you were sharing. That was very, very good. Thanks very much for presenting this to us.
You're
So
welcome.
we do have like about two final questions before we end for today. So there's a question that came in from Stanley. So Stanley says, my earlier understanding of Ansible is that it is a configuration management tool, which implies that it is used to manage already provisioned resources. With this demonstration, how do you differ Ansible to Terraform?
Okay, so there's a bit of overlap between these different tools, right? Terraform is merely an infrastructure as code where you define your resources, where you set up your infrastructure. But Ansible can also do that for you because I mean technology grows, so it's been extended to be able to now set up resources for you, but it now goes ahead to now install your software. We didn't do that, but you can easily run Ansible tasks that would install your your packages, your Nginx, your Node.js, your Java package, right? So the difference between them is that with Terraform, you provision infrastructure, right? With Ansible, you can also provision infrastructure and also go ahead to configure your software in that infrastructure. So it's extensible, right? There's a bit of overlap between the two, but your understanding is correct. But Ansible has been extended to do that for you to
Awesome.
also set up your infrastructure.
Awesome. That's amazing. And also just in the chat window, there's just been a lot of people saying great session, great session. So you obviously has done a very good very good job. So thanks very much again. So final question before we end this series. So ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of this entire study series. So many weeks ago, we started the Azure Administrator live study series and the DevOps Fundamental live study series that was asked for by the community. And Paul set everything up in the back end and brought in amazing speakers like Chemaka and Imo and Rafael and many other people. So, and this is sort of like the end of it. So, if you're yet to join our meetup group, make sure you join our meetup group because we'll be announcing other events that we're going to be having in the Azure Nigeria community as time goes on. But final question for you, Chiamaka. Exactly. That was my question. Wow. That was my question, Jim. So, Chiamaka, from law all the way to tech, how did that happen? So, just in a few minutes, how did you do that? How did that happen? How did you take that step? Because I'm sure many people are out there that see the booming tech industry. They've studied different things and they would like to make the same journey that you've made. So if you can just share that with us very quickly, that would be great.
Um, um, it's not much of a story. I've always been interested in technology right from school. I ran my own business center, so I've always been doing this. And when I got introduced to programming, I started with programming, software engineer. Yes, so that's where I started from before I moved into DevOps. I love the fact that I could see what I was doing. I could get my results immediately, and that kind of encouraged me to keep it going, right? So it's not I mean, I've always been fascinated by technology. I'm kind of a um tech tech addict. I don't know what they call it, but I'm kind of person that buys a lot of gadgets and things like that. So I've always been tech, but sometimes I don't I like law. I mean, it's interesting, and but then I think I found my calling in tech, and here I am.
Awesome. That's amazing. I'm sure that we're going to have further sessions where we're going to get
Definitely.
more of the story and get more educated on that aspect. But again, it's been an amazing session, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks very much, everyone, for joining us. Thanks very much, Amaka, for presenting. Thanks very much, Imo, for the amazing moderation that you did. So it's been very awesome. So till next time, have a lovely evening, morning, afternoon, everyone. See you later. Bye.